Hey everyone, thanks so much for checking in and tuning in to another Biztainment Weekly. This is a great show. A friend of mine that I met through LinkedIn, his name's Danny, and he's a film producer and he's branching out on his own. Come to find out on the show, he was actually in a really big HBO series, one part, but he was in it, and it's really cool. I didn't realize that. So make sure you subscribe, check out our channel. Make sure you let us know how we're doing, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. And thank you always to Magazine Jukebox for hosting this. So appreciate it. What up? Hey everybody! Welcome to Biztainment Weekly. I'm super excited. We have a great guest here, but first, I'm Scott, your host. And make sure you subscribe, check in, and leave comments. We always love that. But my guest is Danny Machado, and we are going to be talking all about startup world. It's really exciting, which I'm kind of knee deep in it, so I get it. But before that, I got to go to what I like to always go to, which is our LinkedIn moment. And I just want to say one thing while I'm rolling into this LinkedIn moment, because I know our producer's going to cue up the music, but our producer's doing all of this while in Canada. It's pretty cool. He's working remote, so talk about talent. So, all right, so LinkedIn moment here. Here we go. So my buddy David, he is the CEO now at Lodge IQ. He's also a mentor and hospitality innovation hub incubator at New York University and host of the Modern Hotelier. Anyways, I just want to post this. I just want to say congratulations to you, David. He was just recently given the position of CEO. I know he's going to do amazing things for them. I want to say congratulations on that. The next one that I want to point out is Hampton Roads Alliance. Norfolk, and I'm just going to read this verbatim, says Norfolk leaders have high hopes for redevelopment projects that will reposition older properties to meet modern market demands. Projects include redeveloping our Military Circle Mall, Fairwinds Landing, and Lambert Point Dock. It kind of goes on with the other locations, but I always love to see communities coming together and revamping and redoing communities. So good job, and I wish them much luck because they're right here in our backyard. But now is that time, the most important time of the show, and it's here to talk to my friend Danny. And Danny, how are you, man? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm doing great.
Good, man. Now
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, you're all the way down in Atlanta, Georgia, and no harm, no being mean to Atlanta, but you're excited to move out of there here soon, I hear. So that's always exciting.
100%.
You're ready. You are ready. Now, Danny has his wife and has a newborn, which is exciting and adds to the mix of being a startup. Newborns tend to do a couple of things. They bring joy to your life. They give you purpose, and they also suck the living daylight out of you of energy. So I feel like that's kind of what my kids did to me, at least. Maybe yours have better experience, but they have no energy. You doing all right though with the energy?
Yep. Yeah, but I have a supportive wife. She took off work and she's been full-time mom, which I wouldn't be able to do all this stuff without her.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it really does take that to make it happen, and to be a quasi one income family too is adds a lot of stressors on there. So I'm excited about diving into this. You are a film producer. You have Danny Machado LLC, and you are doing film. You want to tell our listeners and guests, or listeners and our viewers, tell them about this film journey that you're on. So what kind of film do you do?
Yeah, about 8 years ago, I got involved in film at a very low level. I was an extra on Burn Notice, and before then, I was just kind of searching for what was next. I had gone to school for business, but had no real direction. I stepped foot in the film on a film set and really fell in love with the world, and started to work my way up into lighting and working on different projects, but still having a love and a desire to be an entrepreneur. I've been working sales as a day job for years, and recently, around 2020, I tried to launch a different startup, which is a tech company, and I started to see the similarities between the business world and the film world. And I think that's what my company right now is trying to do. Is I'm watching more videos on building startup pitch decks as opposed to pitch decks for films, and approaching it that way, as building each project is its individual startup. And so about a week ago we sold an option that was a film that we were working on, so we've handed that off to a more experienced production company that can actually film it.
That's awesome. They so okay, a couple of things I got to unravel here. So you were on the show or you're working on the show?
I was on Burn Notice as an extra a couple
That's all.
times, and then I became a production assistant on some other shows, Ballers, Step Up
Ball? No,
Four.
no, no, no. Whoa, hold on, hold on.
Yeah,
You were helping out with the show Ballers on HBO.
I'm actually in it. Episode 2, I think, or 1. I'm the valet guy in
Oh
Ballers.
snap! I'm gonna have to check this out. I love that series, and I was so
Yeah,
mad. I felt like they ended that series so abruptly that it
yeah,
just like drove me nuts that they did that. That was a great show, and that is a great like now fair warning, not for kids, don't, not for those who want to keep things PG or better, but but the show is like definitely about going for it and
hmm,
things like that. And I love that series. It was great. And now I'm going to have to go check that out. That's awesome, man. Way to drop that on me. All right. So,
nice.
all right. So you're diving into, and I love that you said pitch decks. A lot of our listeners and viewers don't understand what a pitch deck is. So just to kind of explain that is where you're going to kind of lay out your vision for the company, the traction maybe that you've had, and then you're going to pitch that to investors, hoping that they will invest in your company. And that is, that is the initial like kind of like gateway into, into getting some money, some support. So those are all yeah. So that's good. So and then learning online, that's so funny. I mean that's what I did. I mean I had to.
Yeah,
It was like there are people out there that'll try to like tell you they'll build a pitch deck for you and they'll spend you'll spend a couple $1,000s maybe having it all done. But then the problem is, and you probably learned this, already, is that the minute you create a pitch deck and you start making some traction, you got to go and revamp the pitch deck. And what are you
right.
going to go do? Go hire them again and spend more money? Like you got to really like learning on your own is like super important. So that's
Yeah.
what was did you okay? So when you're creating that pitch deck and what would you say are some of the biggest struggles in creating that pitch deck?
So in the film world, they call it like lookbooks.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I noticed that the lookbook and the pitch deck are the same thing. The lookbook kind of gives you looks for what the film will look like, the episode synopsis about the episodes. But I realized that I was pitching investors and I wasn't pitching other filmmakers. So I took the philosophies from startups and brought in the financials into my lookbook and made it more of a pitch deck, because I felt like they don't really care if it's a really great story. They care about how much money they can make off of it first and foremost. So the hardest thing is figuring out the financials, figuring out what to compare it to, and especially when we get into the arts, it's hard to say like, well, I have the ship movie, so it's going to be the next Titanic.
Yeah. Oh man, you would bring up Titanic. It's so funny. I heard the story that the owner of Titanic wasn't even on the ship, or the primary owner, and that all these like conspiracy theories going on. Like it wasn't actually Titanic that sunk; it was the old ship, and he painted on there. And anyways,
Jeez.
people go look it all up. It's really funny. Okay, so now you've been doing this for how long? So how long have you now been doing film? Production or film or producing film.
I've climbed up from lighting and doing different things. I filmed a short film that I directed in 2019, and then from there I was like, no, I need to. Every time I've done something, I felt like I need more control. And even now, selling the last project, I sold it for a flat amount, and I'm also feeling like I need to go all the way, because I won't become rich off 10,000 or 20,000, and I won't be able to retire that way. So that's why I'm leaning more into starting to develop projects, is the next step, and not just sell them to someone else and kind of profit off of that. So to answer your question, just the production specifically, I've been doing that just for about a year. and I optioned this last project for $1. And I got a lot of people saying that it couldn't be done. So for me, it's just been about taking some of these sales philosophies, cold calling, taking no's, researching who would be your clients, and can we provide value even to a company like Warner Brothers? Like, do they have a gap in their offerings, and can we provide value even if we have no relationship? I think that if you bring something of value to someone, they'll take the phone call regardless of what other caveats they may have.
Yeah, I mean, man, that's huge, and congratulations on even selling, even if you sold it for a flat, amount. I mean,
I
that's
did.
awesome. It's awesome to be able to sell a project. I mean, it just goes to attest to your hard work and that someone out there found value in it, that they were able to being willing to purchase it, and that's a huge thing. And I don't think, in the startup world, you're going to hear, and not you, but just in general, anybody who's thinking about starting up a company, they're going to hear a lot of go live, go live, go live, just get it out there, go live. And they know that the importance behind that is, what's the enemy of great? It's good enough. And the idea is that you need to get something that's good enough out there in the market to really get true, honest feedback. Because you could create maybe like you know, the best like chocolate bar in the world. But if you put it out there and you think it's the best chocolate bar, and you put it out there and then all of a sudden it's not the best chocolate bar, and in fact nobody wants it, then you know then you have no market fit. So I think that's really, really cool, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They I so okay, so I want to tap into a little bit. Talk to me about, what do you find to be like some of your biggest struggles as a startup? Because you're in Atlanta now and you're wanting to relocate, but and especially in film, is this kind of like film's going to go with you wherever you go? Or because in my world, I'm from Hollywood, California, so when I think film, I'm naturally going right back to my home roots, and
Yeah.
saying, well, that's where you need to be. That's where you need to be pitching all this. But has COVID changed some of this, or is it nothing to do with COVID, and it's just it's not necessary to be near the studios?
Yeah, I think I've had a few people say let's get coffee, and so one thing that I did a couple years back is get an area code for California. So I've had full blown conversations where they're like, yeah, and when you're at in Calabasas, and they'll just assume that that's where I'm at. So I don't know if there's some sort of stigma about talking to people outside of California. I haven't felt it. Maybe it's because I have the number. So so that's kind of been my workaround. But there have been meetings that I haven't been able to attend because I wasn't in the city. There's a lot of people pitching in Hollywood. I think that there's investors that have fatigue in Hollywood for investing and maybe losing money on films. And I think when you go to markets like a Virginia or even more rural Georgia, you find people who have never been pitched a film.
Wow.
And there's an advantage to that. There's an advantage to calling a pizza shop and getting free pizzas because they didn't get 20 calls from other filmmakers in the area like they would in LA. And what I feel is that we need to bring together a village in startups or in art to come together and really help a vision come to fruition. And that could be, coders or just people who are willing to direct at a lower fee, or write the writer optioned his script to me for $1, for example, making some sacrifices on the front end so that something can happen. I always think about a world where he said, no, I won't do it for $1. I want $1,000. And it was, he wrote it 3 years before, and it was just collecting dust, and now it's something because
Right.
he took a risk and kind of was able to collaborate. So I think collaboration is important, and I feel like I found more support in smaller towns like Colorado or even Nebraska, Maine, than I have in some of the bigger markets. I think it's a little bit tougher out there.
I've It's interesting. So my brother, his name's Richard, and he's into film producing. He lives in California, and and it's funny we were mentioning Titanic. He was an extra on Titanic with
Yes.
Leonardo. He's a little bit older than me, so if he listens to this, I don't want to be mean to him and call him an old man, but he's quite a bit older than me. But man, I'll tell you, I know it's a lot of hard work, and so much of it is about who you know. So how do you leverage that? How do you work relationships? I know that you and I, we met on LinkedIn, so it's do you use LinkedIn a lot to build networks, and are you finding success there? Or I would think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would think being more on the, art side of things with film that, maybe Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook would be better. Any advice that you can give on that and some insight?
I tell everyone to get a LinkedIn. LinkedIn literally changed my life. It sounds like a commercial, but I was working at restaurants and working as a bartender, and from opening, making a LinkedIn page, I got my first kind of office job, which was working for Toast as a BDR. So that was my first position, and I got it because of LinkedIn. But in addition to that, I get scripts sent to me through LinkedIn. A lot of the connections that I have are started on LinkedIn as well. And then if you leverage like LinkedIn Navigator, things like that for sales, you're able to contact people and build your network that way. So I tell everyone, and to answer your question about Instagram and kind of the other social media platforms, if you're creating content and you have a lot of content to post, I think those are great because they're visual mediums. Otherwise, I think LinkedIn is the way to go because there's just you're automatically more of a professional if you approach someone on LinkedIn versus Instagram, I
Man,
think.
I love that you're saying that, and I hope that our listeners are diving into this. If they don't have a LinkedIn account, my wife and I we joke a lot about the fact that she doesn't have a LinkedIn account, but she's also the CEO of three companies really, and they bring in over 8 million in ARR, and it's like I'm like, why are you not like, why don't you have a LinkedIn page? She's like, well, I have all these other ones that it's just too much to manage, and it's funny because then I I tell her, hey, look, I'm posting on LinkedIn because I don't personally have a Facebook page, and I have like a private Instagram page, and that's just for me and my family to be able to basically exchange pictures.
Hmm.
Um, but it's yeah, I mean, I think LinkedIn is where it's at. I love LinkedIn. That's why we do our LinkedIn moment. Um, I think you're gonna, you drown out a lot of that hogwash that's going on in the world in because LinkedIn's just not a place for that,
Right.
which is nice. And then you have the fact that yeah, you can connect. There's that whole rule of like 7 degrees of separation, and it's like
Yeah.
when you think about it, you may not know the person, but maybe someone in your chain
Hmm.
knows that person, so you may have a second connection or a third connection, and that to me is really important. That's been to a lot of magazine jukebox's success was from is from LinkedIn. So connecting with business professionals. So I'm glad that you said that because this younger generation, man, I'll tell you, if I went to any freshman in college right now, I would say if you have the best LinkedIn page by the time you graduate, you'll be the first one to have a job. You'll be the
Yeah.
first one to get that job that you're wanting.
Yeah. It's also the type of eyeballs you get on LinkedIn. You can have 1,000 views on Instagram, but those people are half of them aren't your customer. They can't help your business. And meanwhile, on LinkedIn, you'll get more like founders and people who can become assets, or even you can learn from them, like I often do from your page.
Well, that was nice. I appreciate that. But I'll pay you later for that next comment. But so, so tell me what's next? Like, what's your next steps now? I mean, besides moving, because we know that that's going to be, uh, in your near future here. I try to entice you to go to maybe Chicks Beach in Virginia Beach, but my producer, he'd probably tell you don't do that.
I'll check it
But
out.
but you are so your family, and you were telling me earlier, your family is from the Dominican Republic, correct?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then you live down in Florida, so you're kind of like making your way up the coastline. But most
Actually,
people,
I went from Florida to Alaska.
oh,
That was my first plane ride, was to
oh man,
Alaska. And then I moved there for 5 months, and then actually, and I made my way back down. I lived in Idaho, Colorado,
oh awesome.
Death Valley, Portland, Maine. I think I hit like 20 something states before I sort of settled down here with marriage
Was
and everything.
was that like trap? Like, were you like going and setting up shop for a couple of months and then going?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I read
awesome.
the book Into the Wild, and he went to Alaska in the book. And at the time, I was just feeling I didn't know what was missing from my life, but I was feeling just kind of depressed. I was exactly where I grew up. My mom is a homebody to the max. She took her first flight in 32 years.
Wow.
about 3 weeks ago to meet her grandchild. So
That's awesome.
I hadn't gone anywhere, and just something struck me. I got inspired by that book, and I went to where he ended up dying in Healy, Alaska.
Wow, I'll have to learn more about this story because yeah, I don't know about that.
It was just a random guy that like left everything behind and went to Alaska. I think he was from Virginia, actually,
Oh
ironically.
wow,
Yeah.
I'll check that out. Well, man, I applaud you for that because so many people will not take that chance. I mean, it's I'm thankful. I've been across the country like 9 times. You know,
Yes.
my best time was 52 hours. I didn't sleep. I was
Wow.
like that was from Fredericksburg to yeah, Los Angeles. Wouldn't
That's awesome.
recommend that. Wouldn't recommend that to anybody. Like,
Too
don't
much.
take some time, enjoy the ride. But yeah, and it's so important too. You get to really experience different cultures and way of
Mhm.
life. And some places are fast, and some places slow down. And I always feel bad for someone who just has been in one place
Yeah.
because they haven't got to experience, all that our country has to offer or other countries.
Hmm.
My wife and I make the joke that we would love to move to St. Martin if we had the chance. Now, talk about you mentioned Hawaii to me before.
Yeah.
It's like Hawaii's great, but it is an island. So you can make it around the whole entire island. I think in about an hour or so, something like that.
They have a few islands, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Right.
if you want to island hop, yeah, you can
Yeah.
do that. That's true. But in St. Martin, it's the Dutch and French all on one island. So, which is cool. You get to transfer between both countries without a passport.
That's cool.
Um, but they, it was funny though because you go to one side. We stayed on the Dutch side, and it's like you go over to the French side, and it's like immediate attitude change. Like it's like you're in Dutch, and they're like, "Yeah, how can we help you? This is great. We're so happy to have you here and spending your money here in our country." And then you go over to the French, you're like, "What are you doing here? Like, why are you here? Get get some bread and get out of here." Like
Yeah.
that's it. So,
Night and day.
but I'm just kidding. We had a great experience there too. So, but you did mention to me that you're also thinking about maybe going overseas, like maybe traveling to another country.
Yeah.
Um, is that would that be beneficial for your startup, or do you it wouldn't really matter because you do most of your stuff remote?
I mean, I do most of the stuff remote, but the dollar goes further in places like Panama or Costa Rica. So if I had more money, then I could put in more money towards startups and endeavors and
Wow.
things like that. So I think rent is about half of what it is here. They still use the US dollar, and a lot of the living expenses are lower as well. So just trying to look at the whole, and that's what traveling provided me, is understanding that um, you know things are completely different. What $1,000 gets you in Miami is way different from what it gets you in Middle America, and so being flexible on where you're at starts to open doors, because I think that there's industry in Panama as well, startups, investors, contacts, and maybe renting that office space, for example, is half the price in Panama, and it may make sense for some companies to look at the whole world.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point or interesting thought that I've had, and I've read some articles on this in the Harvard Business Review. Um, but do you pay do you, do do you pay an employee based on where they live, or do you pay them based on where the company's at? And the reason why I'm posing this kind of question is as you bring on employees, as your startup expands and grows, my question would be, are you going to, or do you think, like someone living in New York City, for example, they have to, like the report that I read is you have to make like 80,000 a year just to pay your rent in New York, which is insane.
Yeah.
And so but if someone, lives in Iowa, they may not need, $80,000 a year to do fine. So and then that poses the next question: if you have a job or opening in New York, but you can work remote and live in Iowa, do you get the same pay as New York, or should it follow where you live? What do you think on that?
I think you get paid based on where you live, but once you secure that payment, you can do what you want if they allow you to move around. And it's just like if you were living in New York and you happen to move somewhere else to Kansas for whatever reason, forget about remote, just that's what ends up happening. They allow you to work from Kansas. I don't think they would dock your pay. And when I worked at Toast, they were based out of Boston, and I was working out of their Omaha office. And I was surprised to hear that the same function was getting paid twice as much in Boston, but their rent was also twice as much. But so I think that's what large corporations are doing as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of the military in this regard because you have what is called your home of record. And your home of record is where you pay your taxes.
Hmm.
So, and then so in this case, you wouldn't necessarily pay. You would still have to pay taxes where you go. Well, anyways, I'm not going to go down that pigeonhole too much, but or foxhole. But I think it's a interesting thought, and someone like yourself as a startup, something you got to think of too. You got to think
Yeah.
about who you're employing and where they live, and are you because there's all kinds of different tax rules. We have with Magazine Jukebox. I have three of my employees live in different states. One lives in
Mhm.
Texas, one lives in Georgia, and another one lives up in Illinois. And John, my COO, lives in Illinois. I keep telling him to move because we pay so much more in taxes for
Oh
where he
wow.
lives, and it's something that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah,
So okay,
that's
so
interesting.
let me ask you this, and I'll because I can talk to you forever, Danny. But what are some things that you're looking for? Maybe one of our listeners or viewers that what, or is there some people that you're trying to get in touch with that maybe through this podcast that it'll force them to listen in and is there someone out there or people out there that you're trying to get in front of?
I'm always looking for great stories to tell. That's what I'm doing right now is reading scripts. I have maybe 9, 10 scripts in front of me to read, hopefully by the end of this week, and just trying to find that next story that has kind of fell through the cracks. And I think that can come from anyone. Obviously, there's screenwriters that have 5, 10 different scripts, but there's also individuals with phenomenal stories that maybe are worth being told and they can be developed as well. So I stay pretty flexible on what story it is, but just looking for good stories that capture people's attentions. Aside from that, if anyone wants to invest in films, investments are always great. And if somebody wants to offer some sort of in kind towards a film production, some sort of charitable in kind type of thing, there's probably opportunity for sponsorships and I partner with some nonprofits that we can take in some donations and give you the tax deduction, things like that.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy to hear like you're reading scripts. I can only imagine some of them you get. Like me, I would fail at your job, and here's why: because it would take me like 20 days to go through one script. Like
It's so much easier than writing them. That's what I say to myself. It's like, okay, well, I can try to write one script, or I can read these scripts, and those are the options I have.
That's awesome. I would never have thought of that, but that makes total sense. Yeah, I'm just a really slow reader, so I've been, cursing in a blessing, I guess. Now with new modern day technology, I just have things read to me. It's great.
I need to look into that. I tried to read on the elliptical this morning. It didn't work, so I kind of need something to read the PDFs for me.
Yeah,
So
I can
that's
see
that's
that.
the
Like
next step.
trying to keep up with. Oh crap! I lost my line.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what happened.
there's definitely technology out there. I mean, no, shameless plug here. Like Magazine Jukebox, all of our magazines have audio to where
That's
people
awesome.
can actually hear the magazine instead of just reading it. So, but yeah, those are out there. I think Spotify is one of them. I think they do some digital download or something. Anyways, yeah, it's well, look, man, I think this has been great. How do people find you? What's the best way for them to reach you?
DannyMachado.com and LinkedIn.
Okay.
Danny
On
Machado
LinkedIn.
on LinkedIn.
That's right. Well, we'll make sure we post all of that for you. We'll make sure on for social media purposes, we'll post your your email and for all of our listeners and viewers, you'll be able to find it. Just make sure you check us out at Biztainment Weekly, and we'll have it posted there. And this will be up, in perpetuity.
Nice.
You'll have this up for as long as we're around, man. So hopefully we'll continue to create more and more content or traction for you. So, man, Danny, it's been great having you on the
Thank you,
show.
Scott.
It's nice to officially meet you,
It's been a
not just
while.
on LinkedIn. I'm excited to hear what's to come, and you never know. Maybe I'll have a script for you one day.
I'm looking forward to it.
Just got to find someone to write it for me. So figure that out.
We could talk about that. We'll
That'd
get
be
you plugged in.
That's awesome, man. I gotta go find that show. I gotta go back and watch Ballers now. What'd you say it was? The second episode?
It's either the first or second episode. It's the one, if you're just scrubbing through, it's the one where Dwayne Johnson is parking his car. I'm just a valet guy with Rob Cordroy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they filmed the first season in Florida, then they moved it to LA. That's why I didn't end up staying on it or continuing to work on it. Yes, Dwayne Johnson's a big dude.
Big dude.
Yeah, big dude. What's I would say the only kind of quirky thing I saw is I think he sweats a lot because he had like a guy that would come and switch his shirt out.
Oh wow!
He would sweat through. It's Miami though. So
yeah.
to be fair, he was outside in Miami, but his whole job, I think he must have like 5 or 10 of the same like blue shirt that he would come and just swap out so he looks dry for the next take.
That's funny. If he just signs those, he can make even more money. I bet you people would buy
should have been tossing them out.
All right. Well, look, man, we got to wrap into the. You know what? I almost forgot, man. You almost let me out of this without giving you your pick your poison. We got to go into pick your poison, man.
Let's do it.
So I know that my producer's going to cue up some music, and then we're going to go through this. But I just got to make sure I got it, man. This is great. So pick your poison. These are just funny, okay? They're not meant to be serious, okay? And you got to choose one or the other. That's it. That's the only options you have. You don't have an option 3, okay? All right, here we go.
Let's do it.
First one: have legs or arms?
Legs.
No. That's not. I'm just saying you have to have legs for arms. Leave it at that. Now we'll go to the second one. That's your first option. Second one: have a mosquito buzzing around your head whenever you're trying to go to sleep. Oh man, this one's tough. Gosh, that would stink so bad.
I'd go with the mosquito.
Yeah, I would have to go with the mosquito.
I'll probably get used to it eventually.
Yeah, like a white noise.
Yeah. It land on you.
Yeah, that'd be horrible. There's a freaking car wash by my house that has an Airbnb on top of it, and it says on their thing it's always booked, and it says on there that it has a little white noise. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what that sounds like.
That's marketing right there.
That's right. Oh, it's great. Well, look, Danny, you've been great, man. Thanks so much for being on the show. Look forward to seeing all your success.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me.
See you, man. Thanks.